Well, Ed, thank you so much for helping my project.
Okay.
Could you say a couple words about yourself?
I don't know. 43 years old and lived in Texas for almost just over 15 years. Grew up in Michigan, but came down here for work for software engineering.
Oh, do you program?
Yeah, I write program. I was a software developer for a while, but I switched over to engineering.
Okay. And what's the difference between like programming and engineering, if you don't mind me asking?
There's a lot of overlap, but when you're a program developer, you're writing just software,
Okay.
and when you're in engineering, you're more on the hardware side.
Oh, okay. So
So
like
it's-
creating servers and server farms and that type
Yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff.
things like that. Yeah.
And networks and storage and all that. Okay, that makes sense. What's your favorite thing to do at Dragon Slayer?
I'm actually here because of my son. He started a D&D league here,
Oh, okay.
so every Wednesday I drive him here, and then I just hang out with all the other parents, I guess, or other people who are playing here. So
That's awesome. Well, did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Oh, did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
Kind of. I think I've heard about that. I'm not sure.
After hearing about it, any initial reactions?
Not really. I mean, it's not really on my radar.
Okay.
But no, I agree with what I can't remember his name now. He's that one scientist. He's always on social media. Nelson.
Oh,
I can't think of his name right now for some reason.
Sure.
But he said anything like, with space exploration or anything like that, because there's always the argument of like, we have so much going on here on planet Earth. Why are we going out to space?
right.
But there's so much scientific advancement because we went out to the moon and because we do stuff in space. Benefits are also here on Earth. So I think it's good. If there's science out there getting improved, I'm all for it.
Well, when you think about where it might lead to, if you were like think out in like the distant future, say like 200 years, do you see humans like living their lives in space, like on the moon and Mars and other places? Or?
I don't. I think the reality is when you actually get into the science of it, humans evolved on Earth.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't understand the detail of that. Everything from the atmospheric pressure, the gravity, like our bodies are designed for that. As soon as you go off to space, you're like, well, you don't have gravity always affecting you. You don't have that outside pressure always on you. I mean, it's going to change the biology inside of you. And I've read that like, oh yeah, astronauts come back from being out in space for 8 months. Like they can't move. They're sitting down and they got to rebuild their muscles and kind of get accustomed to back to being on Earth. So it's just not that easy of like, oh, let's just terraform Mars and live on Mars. I'm like, there's a difference in gravity. There's a difference in atmospheric pressures and things. It's like, it's just not that simple. Let's just go live somewhere else.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like the atmosphere on Mars is like so thin that even at the highest planes are flying in denser atmosphere than what you have on Mars.
Yeah.
the Valley on Mars.
I heard something interesting about you have boiling points and like melting points.
Sure.
And I want to say boiling. How did it? Sorry, freezing points and boiling points. And freezing point is a property, but boiling point is dependent on like pressure and temperature and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So there's places on Mars where you get to because of the weak atmosphere, you're gonna have spots where water is gonna be freezing and boiling at the same temperature, right? I mean, it's gonna be different than like living on Earth. It's not a straightforward just go over there and then like things are gonna be different.
It'd be like living in a submarine,
Oh,
which is
yeah,
being underneath the ocean, you have to have some way to maintain the right pressure and temperature and
Right.
flow and everything.
And even then, when you talk about like divers, like they can't just come back up to the surface.
Right. Because
They get air bubbles and stuff in their blood, they'll die. So it's like, you gotta know the science behind everything and take a lot of precautions. We should just stay on Earth.
But if you had the opportunity to like go to space like for a day or two, is that something that would interest you?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is like, personally, yeah, that would be once in a lifetime sort of thing. I think it'd be thrilling and exciting, and probably right before takeoff, I'd be like, well, why am I doing this again? But once you're out there,
feeling right before I get on the roller coaster.
yeah,
too,
yeah, you know. But once you're out there and you actually get to look at everything and to see everything, but to sit there and say, yeah, waste all these resources and air pollution and all that stuff just to get me out into space, kind of sounds greedy at the same time, right? But I like a quote from, again, I'm horrible with names. I can't remember the astronaut, but one of the astronauts that was on the moon was like, get every world leader, every politician up on the moon, have them stare back at the Earth and understand something you'll never understand before, that we're all together on this and we have to work together. And so I think being able to go up to space and having an experience like that, I definitely take it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. All of our world maps and all of our globes, the political lines are so distinct. But you know, in space, all that doesn't exist.
Right.
It's almost like maybe we do better just having like actual pictures of the Earth that we teach kids instead of kind of
Right.
making this artificial distinction between places.
Yeah, stop having all these borders everywhere.
Do you think you'll get a chance to go to space in your lifetime?
No, I don't.
Do you think your son will?
Maybe.
Okay. And maybe
That'd be interesting.
your grandson, I guess, you feel more definite perhaps?
I would hope so. I mean, just the way with like political and the way that, you know, money makes the world go round. It's like,
Sure.
is it ever going to get to the point where just, you know, everyday commoner people can just go and experience something like that, or is that going to kind of just stop progress, slow it down?
Yeah. But I mean, like flying at one point was for really ultra rich people, and you know now you could fly Ryanair in Europe and go between cities for like 20 euros, and it's like,
Right.
whoa.
I mean, if the technology can get there, we're finding, you know, clever ways with science to, you know, get out of the gravity without like having to have like a very expensive rocket fuel or whatever. You know, then that kind of thing could become a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some speculation that maybe you could build a space elevator, have like a counterweight in geostationary orbit, and then have like a thread come down to the surface, and then have some type of vehicle that actually just kind of, you know, drove up the tread, to kind of lift itself.
Right.
Might take you a week or two to get to space, but hey, I mean, potentially you wouldn't need fuel. You would just use like beam energy and use electric mechanical motion to get you out. So.
Interesting.
Anyway, maybe. Well, Ed, thank you so much for your time. It's such a pleasure to get to talk to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice.